made in enough with enough advance notice. And second, I seem to have lost the roll call somewhere on here, probably in one of my 3 edits of this. So if we could get a call to order, I'll move directly into a roll call, and then we'll get a statement of necessity and move into our agenda. Mr. King?
Okay, thank you, Michael. I'll call the meeting of the Engineering Committee to order. So please proceed with the roll call.
Thank you, sir. We'll go into a roll call here. Mr. Barrick.
Here.
There you are. Mr. Bursai.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Oh, Alton skipped spot. Thank you, sir. Mr. Heathcote. Alton, you're supposed to take yourself off the mute when you want to talk and put yourself on mute when you're not talking.
Sorry about that. I'm here. I'm right here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, we're in full attendance. Thank you. Statement of necessity, please, Maria.
Thanks, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Tennessee Board of Architectural Engineer Examiners Engineering Committee, which is taking place by electronic means utilizing the WebEx teleconference application on Wednesday, April 7, 2021. Notice that this meeting was properly posted to the board's website. Because there is not a physical quorum present, a statement of necessity is read into the record and filed with the Tennessee Secretary of State as required by statute. Pursuant to TCA 844-108B2, if a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of a governing body, in order for a quorum of members to participate by electronic or other means of communication, the governing body must make a determination that a necessity exists. That determination must include a recitation of the facts and circumstances on which it was based. Further, TCA 844-108A3 defines necessity as matters to be considered by the governing body at that meeting require timely action by the body. That physical presence by a quorum of the members is not practical within the period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communications is necessary. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Tennessee Board of Architectural and Engineer Examiners Engineering Committee. The purpose of this meeting with members attending by teleconference is to discuss regularly scheduled matters of the committee. The WebEx teleconference application is being utilized in order to provide the most safe manner of meeting due to COVID-19. All voting will be conducted by roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Let's see. This is the regularly scheduled meeting leading up to the full board meeting, which will be happening tomorrow. So there are applications and audits for review on this agenda. We also have a continuation of the engineering technology discussion with decoupling. Are there any agenda changes that need to be made?
Hey, Michael, this is Alton. Just for the record, one, I wanted to thank Ricky for preparing the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which were very, very helpful. And I'm grateful to him for doing that. And I hope that that's something that we can continue to do. The second thing is I think probably by now everybody has received Tony Glandorf's opinion about the application reviews and our authority in application reviews. I don't know whether or not we need to have that on the agenda, but it will become maybe part of the discussion as we get into the applications and audits.
Thanks, Alton. And I would like to say that Ricky's notes are in fact just notes. They are not official minutes. We don't keep official minutes for the committee meetings with the A&E board. So we'd just like to clarify that they're not official minutes, rather just notes that Ricky kept. But we will continue the tradition for as long as we can. And I think between myself, Morgan, who is also on all of our calls, and any one of you who have notes, we could probably compile a pretty decent set of meeting notes after each meeting. So, Mr. King, would you like to proceed?
Hey, Michael, I've got that one agenda item. This is Ricky.
Sure thing.
Go ahead, Ricky.
Okay, we probably need to cover the NCEES Southern Zone meeting that's coming up and concerning voting. I think either at this meeting or some kind of meeting between now and then, so that we can talk about how we want to vote.
Ricky, you'll have to forgive me. I've had a pretty rough week so far. My computer received an update late last week, and I've lost the accessibility to the shared drive until today. But prior to today, I had a bad reaction to a COVID vaccine that, well, it just kind of laid me flat on my back for 24 hours, to say the least. Has that email of the ballots officially been sent out?
Yeah, they are listed on the NCEES website, the ballot for the Southern Zone. So they have three candidates for the vice president and two candidates for the assistant vice president. And that's, at this point, that's all I know of in terms of what we're voting on at the Southern Zone meeting. You may be right. Maybe there's going to be a subsequent email with more things that we would vote on.
Being this is my first go round, I want to say that there will be an official ballot that goes out. However, in this case, if we know that the candidates are, the candidacy window is closed, I would ask Maria if we could amend the agenda to make that discussion possible today with an agreement by the committee that would be voted on, or because it would involve a vote, do we need to schedule it for another time?
Michael, we can add that today. That's fine.
Okay, we'll add that discussion to today's agenda.
Great, thanks.
No, we also need to select 2 voting members.
I believe that I filled that paperwork out last year, and I want to say that it was in June, which is why I kind of asked that question of have the ballots been officially recognized and closed, because I feel like I filled out these things last year, and Mr. Hathcote, you were chairman last year. I believe you were one of the voting members. Is that correct? Alton, are you still with us?
Hey, Michael, this isn't Alton. It's Robert. Let me, I think there's two.
All right, I'm
questions.
just unmuted.
Yeah. There's actually 2 questions there. I think the form you filled out last in June, was for the annual meeting. The one we have coming up is the zone meeting, which is the southern states. So you're correct. You did get a ballot for last year's annual meeting. The zone meeting's typically a little less formal, so you may not receive one. And then Steve's question, I think, was on what delegates we need to also put in for the annual meeting that's in New Orleans. That was a question on the NCWS call today.
And I think, Robert, you correct me if I'm wrong, but in the past, haven't we had the opportunity to send 3 delegates? Isn't that what the state's policy is? We send 3 delegates plus the executive director and legal counsel?
Yeah, Alton, I mean, that's been the thing, but NCAAS is limited to 2 people per board, regardless, because of COVID and some of the restrictions that they may have with the meeting space. There may be opportunity for more depending on who responds in the affirmative, and how many they can actually bring on site.
So are we asking for a determination at this point about who will attend that conference?
Yeah, I think that, Steve, correct me, but I think that's something that needs to be on the agenda. I think that's one of the questions he asked.
Yeah, I
And
think they
just
want to
from a-
know, excuse me, I think in the previous meeting, they wanted to know, actually, they said by April the 5th, if our board was going to send to, because for planning purposes, sounds like they could decide if boards aren't going to allow travel by August, that they want to know that as soon as possible to help them decide whether they'll keep trying to have an in-person meeting or do something else.
Okay, I was able to locate correspondence between myself and Sherry Dyer from March 15th. I'll have to do some more looking, but I have Southern Zone Interim Meeting 2021 voting delegate forms, which indicate, oh, that's surveyors. Let me see here. Indicates Mr. Bursai and Mr. Campbell as Mr. Bursai as the voting member and Mr. Campbell as the backup. Is there anything that any comments to that?
Yes, and I think that, Michael, that Southern Zone meeting is next week on the calendar, I think, the 15th. So that's why I was saying, at least for what I was referencing, just to be clear, that we would discuss today is how we need to vote in terms of those officer elections at the Southern Zone next week. Since I'll have to do
Okay.
that.
I'm sorry. I was mixed up again. I thought we were talking about the delegation.
My apologies. Yes, I was talking about the Southern Zone that's coming up in a week.
Okay. Where would y'all like to add that to the agenda?
That can be at the end. That's okay with me to be at the end.
All right, we will add that to the end.
Does the
Mr.
full
King, would you
board,
like?
yeah, does the full board need to approve our 2 delegates to the annual meeting?
I don't believe so, but again, this is my first year going through this process, so I would ask Maria or Wanda if that approval is needed. I want to say that because they're not members of the NCEES, I want to say that their approval is not needed. Maria, would you be able to verify that for me, or Wanda?
I'll let Wanda speak on it if she knows. Sorry, go
I
ahead, Rhonda.
actually can't remember, to tell you the truth. I know we always voted on it in the committee meeting, but I don't remember if the full board had to vote or not. Because like you said, the
Run
full
into
board
this.
isn't part of NCES, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I'll say I've run into this with other boards as well. And I think, we can vote on it if it's absolutely necessary, but, it's more of like a recommendation that the committee's making.
Yeah,
I mean, we can,
so we could approach it as the committee, you as the committee and you as the members of the NCES. When you make your report, the full board meeting tomorrow, you can say the committee is recommending, the committee voted and recommended to support these candidates for, Southern Zone officership at the NCES meeting next week. And unless there's an objection, I don't know that there would need to be a conversation about that.
Michael, this is Robert. I think we in the past have brought that in the committee. We've kind of picked delegates by acclamation and availability. Just who could go and a couple, who had time, all the kind of things there. But I think we have brought it to the board just for, because in the past we've had to go seek funding for some delegates to go to the meeting from the commerce and insurance hierarchy. And so we would have to bring those in front of the board in order to get approval for travel and reimbursement. I don't know that's the case this year because of the limitation on numbers, but I know in years past when we would send, 3, 4, 5, 6, we did have to get approval from the board because it's no different than if Alton goes to Tennessee Tech and speaks and wants reimbursement for his travel or his mileage or something. I think we have to get that part of it approved. So I think it's best if we just get approval. That way we're not running afoul of anything.
Yeah, thank you,
Okay.
Robert. That's a really great point. Because I'll say, I know some organizations, they fully fund the board members to attend, so it's not, it's kind of independent of the board funds, but that's a really great point that if it is coming out of the budget of the full board, then we probably need to vote on it. I thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and I think this year, Maria, it makes no difference because I think we're getting funded by NCEES. So I don't think there's any issue, but in the past we've needed to do that.
Okay. Maria, correct me if I'm wrong. I think at this point, the travel and reimbursement from the situation only applies to in-state travel currently, does it not?
I believe that we are still under executive order that out-of-state travel is prohibited for state employees. I can double check that real quick.
Okay. I just want to make sure that if that is the case, that we're all aware that this meeting is proposed to be taking place out of state, which means we would, I think once we would get a number in terms of what it would cost, I believe we'd have to come back and revisit this as what's the word? A reimbursement. But if the NCEES is funding a couple of members to visit or to travel, then you're right, that would not be an issue.
Okay, but very well. You want me to proceed now, Michael?
I'm okay with that if you are, sir.
I guess the committee should weigh in on Robert and Ricky being the two delegates. I'm certainly okay with that. Is that okay with the others?
Steve, this is Alton. I support that decision.
You okay with that, Rob?
Yes, sir, I'm fine.
Very well. Guess now we'll proceed to applications. I'll apologize up front. I didn't have a lot of time in the past day or so to look this over, but I see that we have 2 applications to consider. The first one is Nadella. So applicant has a foreign degree, approved by Ricky. Robert would like to discuss. He appears to be one math course short in his NCWS evaluation. Robert, you want to kick us off there?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it, Steve. I've put these emails in here and done such a good job organizing them, I've lost it. Let's see here. In general, I didn't know that we had much flexibility in approving somebody that had a math and science deficiency that was over 3 hours. But I could not remember that, and I wanted to just make sure that we were on the right path. Why can't I find that?
It's in SharePoint if that helps.
Yes, ma'am. I will go look that up. That's where I was heading next.
Robert, you want me to?
Go ahead, Rick, and I'll look that up as well.
Okay, yeah. My memory is that we've had some applicants in the past that were, when they're this close, like 3 hours of a math course, we looked at either their experience or their other schooling to see if we felt like they had that whole adequately. And so I think we have had some applicants where we showed some flexibility there. And what I looked at with this candidate is, so it's a person with an electrical engineering degree who had 82 engineering course hours. That's above the 48 that are required. So there were 3 short in math, but 34 to the good on the engineering courses. And I think of these electrical engineering courses as pretty math heavy. And then when you add on top of that this candidate or applicant has a master's in electrical engineering that probably has some more math. I felt like that that was acceptable to make up that 3 hour deficit. Again, thinking that we had kind of looked at things in that way. Plus, on top of that, it looks like the experience was good, and the direct supervisor for this applicant gave a pretty strong recommendation. And is a PE, or supervisor to PE. So with all of that taken into account, that's why I approved.
Is this a good time to discuss Tony's email to us?
You're in the chair. Knock us out, man.
I think both this one and Mr. Al Helu, Tony's email applies to both of those.
Just so you guys know, I messaged Tony and said that y'all are wanting to discuss this. So hopefully he can jump on in a little bit. I think he's in a meeting right now, but I'll let you know what he says.
Well, someone want to give us a summary of that? I remember reading it, but I couldn't put my finger on it quickly. Alton, you want to give us a summary of that?
Steve, you talking about Tony's email?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Basically, if it's okay, I'll just read what Tony wrote. He said, this is an issue that's risen before and confuses people because the rule is not entirely clear. However, the board created policies in the past to provide guidance on how they implement the rules. The original rule states they must comply under TCA 62-2-304, which is via reciprocity. Engineers fall under Subdivision A that requires someone licensed in another state to meet all requirements under Tennessee statute and rules. The rule for requirements related to non-ABET accredited programs, which the statute doesn't require from ABET, but was deemed so by the board under this rule, is in 120-01-.10b, which allows a person or entity approved by the board to review for ABET education equivalency. The board committee could be such person or entity. So in other words, we can make the determination as our committee about whether or not we think it satisfies those conditions. I'll continue on to say, his email continues on to say, supporting this notion is the board policy on its website titled Committee Application Review, which indicates that if the applicant does not have an ABET approved degree, the application will be transmitted to the appropriate application review committee for evaluation. The committee may evaluate this applicant's entire education as to whether it meets their standards for ABET equivalency. Also, the board does have a policy called the Official Transcript Waiver Policy, allowing a person whose education transcripts are lost or destroyed to provide an affidavit and supplemental information to the board for evaluation as would be appropriate in this case. Given this, the committee may evaluate this applicant for ABET education equivalency, and if found equivalent, has authority to issue a registration based on their finding. I guess both Robert and Ricky reviewed this applicant, and I'm not sure whether the issue was associated with the education requirements or the experience requirements. So I'd like to hear from both Robert and Ricky the reason for concern.
Alton, yeah, this is Ricky. This is the applicant I think we're talking about is Nadella, and that was the equivalency check of the degree was 3 hours short on math and science, and that's who I was referring to when I said, when I looked at the engineering courses that were 34 hours more than required in electrical engineering and the master's degree in electrical engineering, I felt like the 3 hours of math was made up by that. And so that's why I approved Nadella.
Okay, so Robert, do you feel like that Tony's email gives you the flexibility to approve?
And Steve, yeah, this is Robert. Yeah, I do. and I can't find Tony's email either, so I'm having a bad day myself. I swear I drug all these into a directory to find them. I don't think I'm this dense, but maybe I am. Uh, my concern, I think, was more along the line of he was claiming that he had because they were high school courses. Um, in India, they had certain things, and we'd had that discussion before. We couldn't go back and evaluate a high school transcript, obviously because that's not really valid. And I think that's probably what got my memory. But I tend to agree with Ricky. I mean, this person's years of practice, along with um, the rigor that they have in math from electrical engineering, I'm fine with that. I just, again, maybe I'm getting my wires crossed when it comes to what we allowed and didn't allow in the past. But if we've got some flexibility, I'm all in on approving him, and I can certainly do that.
I see Tony's joined us now. I bet you have some words of wisdom.
Oh, I don't think not really. Good. It was good to see you all this afternoon. I wrote that back on, I guess after your last committee meeting that you all had, and I admittedly don't necessarily keep up with exactly if I'm going to be needed on the next agenda of the committee meeting, but I remember we put some pretty good thought into that email, I think, that you all see there. And I thought the question as it arose, I kind of started with the idea of, well, what makes sense, because this person is already licensed, been licensed for a while, and they already have these degrees. And I think, Wanda always gives really good input on things that have been done in the past, and I always know that there was a reason that they did them, and they usually had policies on there, or the rules would allow, were interpreted to allow for something. So what I put together when we went back to the website and looked at the previous policies, where it indicated that it'd be transmitted to the committee for some of those for the comedy issues, then that's when I looked at the rule and I thought, well, I mean, it makes sense that it's a person or an entity, and if it's one of those entities that we normally give it to, and they say, well, we don't have the right information to make the determination, the rule doesn't say we have to stop there. I think so long as whoever's reviewing it. And I think the committee that though they all can review it and say whether or not it appears to meet those ABEC credentials or equivalencies, that if that satisfies you all, then you all have made a decision based off of your own analysis on it. And so that's where it's kind of the gist of where I got to on my email, which I tried to be concise when I gave that explanation for you all.
Steve.
Yes, Ricky, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Tony's explanation was very helpful. It was great. It was concise, and it helped immediately with that applicant we were dealing with last time. So that was one I had questioned that then I was able to approve. On this one, Robert, one more thing in terms of what I remember we have done in the past. What I'm remembering is an environmental engineer who was 3 hours short on math and science, but we looked at their coursework and felt like because of some environmental courses they took that had science topics in them, that we approved. So I think we've taken this kind of flexibility before on something like a 3 hours deficiency in math and science. So that's what I was remembering. I don't know if that rings a bell.
Ricky, this is Alton. I remember the same thing. Robert, I think you were the one that maybe made the recommendation. I think we were looking at somebody who was applying or applying with pursuing a structural engineering license, who was maybe deficient in a biology or chemistry. I think and it wasn't very many hours, maybe 1 or 2 or 3. And I think in that particular instance, we said that based on their work history and their progressive experience, that the lack of a biology or chemistry hour or two wasn't anything that would deter them from being a good structural engineer.
Hey, Alton, yeah, I remember that, but I think it was and again, I'm okay with this guy based on what he said, but I think we had looked at, and we've had a few cases like that where we've made the determination that the person was far enough along their career path that the deficiency in the course was not something that they had to have to continue on. And in your case of the structural engineer, you're exactly right. Obviously, an electrical engineer needs a little math. So that was, and then he was, again, kind of what gave me pause was he was going back to his high school transcript to prove his point. And I know we had rejected that argument in the past, but I'm fine. I mean, again, with all the courses he's had in the years he's had in the field, but I just wanted to bring it up because I just was not sure. My memory fails me some, so trying to get that worked out.
Okay, do we need a motion and a roll call vote on this one, Michael?
Hey, Steve, this is Alton, and I'm not sure what the protocol is, but I think that if you've got, Ricky has already recommended for approval, and Robert is saying at this point that he also recommends approval. That's the two that are required. I may be mistaken though. I bow to our legal counsel.
I agree. I was just going to defer to staff to make that decision.
It doesn't require
I
a roll
don't-
call vote.
Thanks. Thank you, Maria. That's what I was going to say.
I didn't hear that because I think you both spoke at the same time.
In this case, it does not require a roll call vote.
Very well. Moving on to the next application. Eric Red was approved by Ricky. Robert requested more experience. Do you have that pulled up to discuss, Robert?
Mr. Campbell?
Sorry, I was on mute. Got too many dialogue boxes and things to keep up with here. So he started off working for Metro Public Health, basically as a pool inspector. And I know that, and then he went to some other things in hotels. I'm trying to cooling towers and that kind of thing. And it just didn't strike me. And I know those are important. My dad had Legionnaire's disease, so I get it. But I've just never thought of somebody that inspects indoor and outdoor pools and their plumbing, along with cooling towers, and they would say they did a little hydraulics, and they reviewed some plans for those. I have just never thought that was a lot of engineering to all that, because you have pool installers that do almost this exact same thing, and it just didn't appear to me to be that. So that was my hesitation.
Okay, Ricky, you want to tell us why you approved?
Well, and I approve, but I agree with Robert that the experience is pretty narrow, and as a inspector inspecting in the field and also inspecting plans, that doesn't mean you can design, but in the in the description of what he did, he talks about the hydraulic analysis, including looking at pipe sizing, flow rates, and velocities, and looking at the fittings for the design, and those are some those are some engineer, or can be engineering task there. So I looked at that, and certainly it looked like his responsibilities grew from just pools to include all of the building systems for hotels, as well as Legionnaire's disease. And so there was some growth over time. And then the supervisor is a PE who gave him a good recommendation. So I felt like, even though this person had narrow experience, it's kind of the field that he went into, and he's got a boss who is a PE, and he has progressed where he's working under the supervision of the boss, but doing his own task. So that's why I approved. But I certainly totally understand what Robert's saying too.
Rob or Alton, you either one want to weigh in?
Rob, I've done a lot of talking already. If you want to go first, I do have a thought, but I'd like to hear your position and opinion.
Well, I'm a little lost. I got the Nadella thing 2 hours ago. And I don't know if you all had that earlier or not. And Eric Red, I can't find. This may all be my fault, but
Mr. Barrick, this is Michael. I can say that the Della was given to us just yesterday, and well, it made it into our system just yesterday. And this morning, I noticed the note on it from Mr. Campbell about wanting to be discussed at this meeting. So we had a very quick turnaround on that, and that's all relative to when we get those sheets back. Now, as for the other one, that may be a SharePoint issue. I know that SharePoint is not the most reliable vehicle that we use, but that it's our vehicle. I'm not sure how to walk you through that, though. Maybe Wanda could help you out.
Yeah, it is in SharePoint. Did you get that yesterday? I placed a folder there and then sent you an email that it was there.
yeah, I got an email saying that I had a folder here and it only had one in it.
And that was red.
That was red.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It should be the application from Red and an email from Dr. Smith.
Okay. Yeah, I got that at 11 o'clock this morning. I'm sorry, I've been on another board meeting all morning long, so I'm not up with you all. I apologize for that. But if you're asking me to weigh in on Nadella, I think the 3 hours of math is, and he's already been registered in 3 or 4 other states. I can't come up with a reasonable, other than the question of what do we have the authority to do, which I'm still unclear on. I can't come up with a reasonable objection to not register him in Tennessee. And as far as Red, you're going to have to tell me about the experience because
Do you want me to send it to you secure email really quickly?
I think I can get it in SharePoint. Just give me a second.
It might be just as easy for either Robert or Ricky to just summarize his education and experience. Rob, I have the same problem sometimes being able to get the information. So I understand where you're coming from, but would one of you all mind to do that quickly?
I can do that. I've got it in front of me.
Wanda, is the Red application in the Nadella folder?
No, it's not. I just sent Nadella this morning. Red is in a different folder.
What folder would
It should say engineering committee meeting or something. I can't remember exactly what I named it.
Yeah, I don't have that in SharePoint. I'm looking at SharePoint and I don't have that.
Okay, let me see what I named it.
Yesterday I got a Nadella folder.
It says April committee meeting for discussion. That's the folder. I'm looking in your file, in your folder right now.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I got it under that. Okay.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, ma'am. I'm up to speed. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
While Rob's looking through that, I think I see where he got his degree in environmental engineering in 2016 and went to work for Metro. But it doesn't look to me like he has 4 years experience. Am I seeing that properly?
I think he had the experience, Steve. I think I counted it, but I'll double check that.
I think he does
Hey,
now.
Robert, this is Alton. I'm looking at his verification of exam for his FE that he took in Florida, and it was in April of 2016.
So, Steve, I'm seeing that he started work in February of 2017. So I'm thinking this February gave him 4 years.
You're right. I see that now, Ricky. I was reading the length of experience on the form, but I guess that's a little behind. So yeah, he does have 4 years. So he has I guess really the issue is whether we can approve his experience. And I'm really not familiar with engineers working for a health department like that. I don't think that's the way I don't think Knox County Health Department has engineers under their employment. So you all more familiar with Metro's organization may have to weigh in on that.
Yeah, Steve, this is Alton. I think that may be a little unique. I mean, as he indicated, and I think as is a requirement, there's a PE that heads that up for the health department, primarily because they are reviewing heavy construction. They're reviewing plans generally submitted to them by either architects or engineers for compliance with local codes and international building codes and things like that. The pool plans, Robert, I agree with you. I mean, in and of itself, I don't think that would necessarily constitute somebody who has gained enough experience and progressive experience in either design or review process. But there were two things that were included in his, I guess, his account of his progressive experience. The one was moving from basically taking red line drawings that his boss wrote up and putting them in a written format to managing the oversight and inspection at, well, one, plan review, and then oversight and inspection of hotels and motels in Davidson County, which included plumbing, electrical, mechanical, and architectural review. And then in addition to that, they also apparently regulate and inspect cooling towers, and they have an inventory of cooling towers throughout the county, and they go and evaluate those and determine the potential for the formation of Legionella. And he assisted and or performed the response methodology for Metro if they have a Legionella outbreak. Evidently, he now heads that program up. So, I mean, he has shown progressive experience. Robert, I agree with you. Is it conventional, like design-based progressive growth and experience? In design-based things, not really. I mean, almost everything he's done in his career here with the health department looks like it's been mostly review and construction inspection. But again, those, I think, Ricky, you have a better handle on this than I do, but I think those are allowable items under our experience guidelines.
Alton, yes, the guidelines include would include what he's doing in terms of review on the job site and review of drawings. I think that's listed as our progressive experience. The problem is what our policy says is we need to give greater weight to the practical application of theory component. And under the practical application of theory description we have, it's pretty, what he's done, it does say knowledge of codes, standards, regulation, and laws that govern applicable engineering activities is part of practical application of theory. So I think he's got that covered. He's dealing with codes and standards and regulations and laws. Time in the engineering process, workflow, scheduling, equipment life, he's probably got that covered. The part that he's kind of thin on is the design and systems application, since he's not really doing the design, but he included that bit of description I mentioned before about doing a hydraulic analysis for his jobs, where he would look at pipe sizes and fittings and velocities in pipes and would dictate changes where required. I felt like that was at least getting the taste of that. You know, if somebody needs to, he would certainly need to know his boundaries on the things that he doesn't know. But anyway, when you look at that practical application of theory, he's got some things in there. It's not ever going to be as much as somebody who is in design, but his boss is a PE, and I felt like that makes a difference too in how these tasks are approached and dealt with.
This is Rob. Thank you
Alvin.
for giving. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rob. Again, I know we tend to go back to this occasionally, but at the end of the day, they still have to overcome the hurdle of passing the PE. So, you know, given what our own requirements are associated, and again, there's a lot of latitude and flexibility in the evaluation of experience, apparently, then we continue to run into that. And I agree with Robert that as far as just pure design, there's not much design experience at all here. But again, our regulations allow for other elements beyond just design to be included in that consideration. And again, we still have the PE as a final hurdle. He can take and pass the PE, then granted, he may not launch out and immediately start doing a lot of detailed design work and putting a seal on it if he's smart. But if he can pass the PE, that's a pretty good indication that he understands the actual application of practice and design.
Rob, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for giving me a chance to catch up here. I understand what Robert is saying, and I think we had this discussion last time we met about someone who had worked for TDOT and was basically a field guy and doesn't have any design experience. And so the question comes up for me, you know, we grant a license, and the license does not give you to the PE license does not give you the right to practice outside of your field of expertise. And if you haven't done any design, it doesn't give you it shouldn't give you that right. And so I guess the question in both of these cases, I mean, this guy's reviewing drawings and he's doing hydraulic calculations and et cetera, et cetera. He's doing a little bit of design related stuff. But for me, the question is, does the experience have to be design, or can it be something else that's, you know, related to implementing or reviewing somebody else's design? And I come down that based on my very short tenure on this board, we are approving people that do not have 4 years of design experience. So having said all that, I guess I would agree with Ricky that his experience is thin, but not a disqualification.
Okay, sounds like of the we would have at least two of the voting members that would support Mr. Red's application. Am I reading that correctly? I take it that Rob wasn't sent this application to formally review. So does this mean we need a motion on this one?
Steve, this
All
is
right,
Alvin.
I lost.
I think unless Robert has altered his opinion, it would require a roll call vote.
This is Robert. I don't think I've altered my opinion. And I understand. To me, it comes back to when I see that Nashville, and maybe they're doing it correct and everybody else is doing it wrong. But I look at other jurisdictions that have health departments doing the same thing, and they've not got PEs doing that work. And again, maybe they got a totally different set of circumstances. But that's kind of my divining point, I suppose, is when I see people put down experience that is done by those that don't have PEs and have not been required to have them for a long, long time. And we've had this discussion when it comes to commissioning, I think, a little bit too. What constitutes PE commissioning and what constitutes just somebody going in and checking to make sure that everything's okay. So I still think, I still just don't like, uh, I still think he's got enough of the right kind of experience for me. But again, I've been outvoted before.
Robert, you bring up I don't want to belabor this, but the notion of commissioning, um, we do a lot of commissioning and we have a lot of professional engineers, but we also have guys that were refrigeration mechanics for 30 years, um, or roofers for 25 years that are doing commissioning. Um, is there such a thing as PE commissioning versus commissioning?
Yeah, Rob, we actually did a policy to kind of define the differentiation on that, and because of what you just mentioned, there's a difference in the level of commissioning that's required sometimes. So I think we have a policy somewhere on the website for that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that Rob says that you need to be a PE if you're going to commission systems that were designed by a PE, that required a PE to be designed. But that doesn't mean that everybody who works on it. It's just like design. Not everybody who works on a design is a PE. It's just got to be under responsible charge of a PE, and that's similar to commissioning. There needs to be a PE in responsible charge of commissioning if you're commissioning an engineered system. That's kind of the way it reads. But I offer one more thing, and I'm not, Robert, I'm not trying to change your vote, because I think that's, I have no problem at all with with what you're saying, because it is kind of slim. But what this topic reminds me of, in my world, there are HVAC sales reps who have engineering degrees and then become PEs, and they do the same thing. There are more reps that are not PEs than there are PEs in the HVAC world. They do pretty much the same thing as the other reps, but we don't prevent them from becoming PEs, and they may do a little bit of design, but I think there are PEs who are vendors who don't do design, because I don't think, you know, that they're two different worlds, and they may not feel like, again, that's their expertise. So anyway, that's just an example of a field where you mostly don't have PEs, but we don't stop somebody from becoming a PE to become a vendor.
Okay, as far as this application, Mr. Red, I think what we would need is a motion and a second from one of the three members and a roll call vote to move forward either way.
Ricky, you got more seniority than me. Why don't you make a motion?
Okay, I will make a motion that we approve the application of the applicant, Red, in this case.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? If not, Michael, would you conduct a roll call vote?
Yes, sir. Mr. King.
I think we concluded that only the member,
Oh,
the
yes,
associates
correct.
can't vote.
I'm sorry. That's my fault. Okay, Mr. Bursai.
Approve, yes.
Mr. Barrick.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
No.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you for that discussion, and I guess the motion carries 2-1. Moving on to the next item. Well, I guess there was an email from Dr. Smith. Do we need to discuss that, Michael? Or was that in regards to one of the applications?
I would ask Wanda. I did not place that in the folder. So Wanda, was that email placed there for clarification purposes or
No,
to be discussed?
that is something he wants the board to look at. We had another applicant a few months back, and he had deficiencies in math, basic sciences. And Dr. Smith said it would be a good idea for the board to adopt a policy like they did for general education, where we would have some kind of policy to make up deficiencies in math, basic sciences.
Gentlemen, we could enter this discussion today if you like, or we could table this discussion to allow for more preparation, and adding it to an agenda item, or adding it as an agenda item, action could be taken. Or if you entered it as discussion today, it would only just be discussion.
Hey, Michael, this is Robert. One of the things that I think that has been somewhat successful in the past on stuff like this is if we can get one of the members to volunteer to do a proposal on this. I think Steve and I did, maybe the general ed one, and had some discussion just about the general ed and what we need to do. I mean, we can certainly entertain discussion on this, but it might be better to have somebody kind of formulate something for us to throw darts at or wrap our arms around.
I think that's a great idea.
This is Rob. Could I make sure that I understand the question on the table as I read this email? What I understand him to be saying is that the board has already adopted a policy, which I'm not familiar with, that allows distance learning for general education. But he is suggesting that we have a policy that says if it's science course that requires a lab, that our policy be that we don't accept online education for courses that require lab. Do I have that? Do I have the question right?
I'm thinking it's a little different than that question. And this is probably not fair because you probably have not seen the general education deficiencies table that Robert talked about. We developed as a way when somebody's curriculum is short on general education deficiencies, there's a chart that can make up or be in lieu of coursework, can make up the deficiency by assigning a particular number of hours to, say, if you've passed a citizenship test, or if you've taken graduate, if you've gotten a graduate degree in the United States, or done some other form of additional education, you can make up the deficiencies that way. So it's kind of a worksheet that allows you to, if somebody's 9 hours short, they might be able to show 12 hours of credit on this sheet. And I think what Dr. Smith is saying is, as a board, he's seen that general education exception sheet, and he's thinking we ought to develop one for math and sciences. Is that, do you other guys see that as, is that being the question on the table?
That's correct, Ricky. That is what it is.
Okay.
And I did include that sheet in the SharePoint folder too, so you could see the general education sheet to
Right.
compare. Right. That's in that folder.
And I did see that that the guidelines for allowing distance learning to address humanities and social sciences deficiencies only. And I think it would be helpful if Rob saw the chart form where engineers just love charts like that. I think it's very helpful that chart form, that information was basically put in.
Hey, Steve, this is Robert. I think when I look at this, the question we're trying to answer is about the math and basic science category, and we are trying to develop a format or a spreadsheet, or whatever we do. But I think as part of that, we need to determine if the distance learning, how much of the distance learning we allow, because we allow CLEP courses and some other things to be equivalent. But I think in the past we've had a real heartburn with distance learning classes from places that maybe weren't ABET accredited. And when you start looking at a laboratory, a distance learning of a laboratory is difficult. My niece is in like pre-med at Emory, and she's having to do some of those online. And she goes, I don't know how we're supposed to learn anything. Basically they've got somebody standing in the lab pouring a beaker full of something, and they're all writing down the results. So, I mean, I don't see how you mix concrete while watching somebody else do it. So, I mean, that's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, from what I remember from the past, if it did require a lab, then they could not do distance learning in that course if it required a lab. But if it did not, then it was allowed.
Yeah, I remember the same thing. But I think that's part of that whole answer on math and basic science, that we need to make that one of the bullets of that, to clarify that.
would you prefer to try to hammer that out today, or to solicit a volunteer to make a draft for us?
I think I would prefer to conscript a volunteer. You know, we've not really officially hazed our newest board member yet.
I'm trying to take it easy on him, Robert. We don't want to run him off here in the first few months.
I guess what he's been through, this board's not going to run him off. But anyway.
Hey, Robert, I've got an idea. What if Rob and I both worked on it, in that I've had the advantage of working with that general education worksheet for a number of years, and kind of combine that with Rob's experience and expertise. Maybe we can tag team on that one.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that sounds like a great idea. Two people helps, and Rob, not trying to be patronizing or anything, but it does kind of help you get in the weeds a little bit on some of these policies, which gives some good insight to that.
Well, it looks like I got conscripted and I got a volunteer to help me, so I couldn't be happier.
That sounds great. All right, let's suggest that maybe the next time we meet, guess that will be in June. We may be back in person from what I hear, but we'll look for a draft from Rob and Ricky to discuss further.
Sounds
Next item on the agenda is technology discussion.
Hey, Steve, this is Alton. I think we deferred Mr. Al Helu's decision until this meeting also. Does everybody remember when we discussed this last time? I don't think we came up with a decision on him, did we?
We did defer that, but he's not on the agenda. Is that okay for us to
Would
pick
he
that
be
application
okay
back up?
under old business maybe? That's typical in a board meeting or a committee meeting.
Alton, I'll have to ask Wanda, but did you approve him?
Yes, he was the applicant I referred to a little earlier when we got Tony's help with understanding the flexibility we had. Then I approved Al Helu, that applicant, and so we had our two approvals.
Yeah, and I'd already approved him, so we're good.
Okay, good. So he's been approved then.
Yes.
Yeah, and like Ricky said, based on Anthony's email, that was kind of validation or whatever on that, or guidance on what we needed.
Okay, very well. Do you want to take up technology degree next?
Now, everybody should have received the updated version of this, and I apologize. I am still running behind. I'm now searching to find it on my computer.
Is this the document that Alton, that you drafted for us?
It is, and it should be sort of in a red line version.
That's a Word document, correct, Alton?
It
Yes,
is.
it is.
It is a Word doc. It says it's called Proposed Language for Allowing ETAC as Alternate Pathway to Licensure.
Does everybody have that document?
I do.
I do.
I guess I should ask, has everybody had a chance to review it?
Can you give us about 2 minutes to kind of look through it and make sure, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, formulate whatever questions or abrasive comments you might have.
It was very elegantly done. Very elegant.
You talking about the font that I used?
No, the thought.
The font was nice too.
Yeah, it was real nice.
Great.
We'll just take a few minutes to read it quickly because probably no one had a chance to before the NCAAS meeting.
Maria, this is Michael. Should we officially take a 5-minute break for this so that they can review the documents? And
Whatever
if
you prefer,
so,
it's fine.
well, I'm just worried about 5 minutes of blank space on our recording. So if we can, I'd like to take a break, officially take a break, let everyone review the document and reconvene at, actually we'll say 3:30. Would that be at 3:30 Central? That'd actually be 4 minutes. Is that enough time?
Good with me.
Okay, well, why don't we
Sounds
stop our
good.
recording? We'll stop our recording and reconvene at 3. Time is up. Thank you. You let it. We are recording again. It's now 3:30, and would like to welcome you all back. I assume everyone's had ample time to make their reviews.
I have a comment on the marks whenever that's appropriate.
I think you can go ahead, Ricky.
Okay. Alton, I see at the bottom of the first page, should we consider moving forward with deleting 62.2, 401A2, and 401A4? And the way I see it, that first one, 62.2, 401A2, is our exception that says that if you have 12 years of experience, then you won't have needed to pass the FE test. It's up all the time, and I'm thinking we still need that one. That we should not get rid of that one.
Yeah, I'm actually okay with that, but I know there's been a lot of discussion in the past about that being an anomaly and whether or not it should remain in. So I could go either way on that.
Okay, well I will just say that and maybe Wanda can weigh in. We get a lot of comedy applicants who have not taken the FE where the 12 years applies. So we would be turning down a pretty good number of people every year if that comes out of there, which we need to be ready for that. We get a decent number of applicants for comedy that use that 12 years instead of the FE.
Yeah, we do have quite a few of those, and of course, some of the exam applicants too.
True.
Ricky, what number is that? I got lost as I was.
Okay, this on the bottom of the first page, Alton's added in all red caps. Should we consider moving forward with deleting 62.2 401A2? And 401A2 is the paragraph that says that basically if you've got 12 years of progressive experience, then you don't have to have had passed the FE test. And
I think we ought to leave that.
I'm thinking we ought to keep it just from the applicants that we get that have, a lot of these people have 20, 25 years of experience doing design, and they make good applicants. And we would, if we get rid of that paragraph, we'd have to turn them down.
In my experience, I've known, I don't know, not that many, maybe a handful of people who got out of school for whatever reason, didn't take the fundamentals exam, and then waited later in life and had trouble passing it, but yet they had ended up with 12 plus years of good engineering and experience and decided to work hard and study and sit for the PE exam and were able to get their license. So I think, especially in today's environment where we're trying to make it more readily accessible to become licensed, that's something that we already have, and I wouldn't think we'd want to delete that.
Go the other way. It also comes into play with foreign applicants if they, and we've got one in our company where they graduate in a foreign country and work 10 years over there, and come over here and apply to be a PE, or more than 10, I guess, 15 years. But they never took the FE because they weren't over here to do that. And it's kind of not reasonable to ask them to go back and take the FE, or maybe not needed. Anyway, you make a good point, Steve. That seems like that's kind of would be going in the opposite direction.
Anybody else have a comment on that issue?
My only comment is I agree with both of you. I think for the reasons you stated, but also, and maybe my comment on a couple other things too, is I think, Alton, you've done a great job on a lot of this, but I think we may be trying to clean up too many things, and maybe that kind of confuses, maybe rains a little fire down on our head that we don't intend to get rained down on our head because of that. Because I think making this change is going to create some angst anyway, and the fewer things we can change and still stay true to what we're trying to do, I think we're in a better shape.
Yeah, I actually, this is Alton. I have no issue or problem with that at all. The other thing that we had talked about was 401A4, which is the master's degree from an approved institution. I thought, Wanda, I think I asked you this question, that sunsetted back in June of 19, if I'm not mistaken, or am I incorrect about that?
Say that again, Alton.
The one about item number, or I'm sorry, 62-2-401A4, master's degree from approved institution. Where if somebody had a master's degree plus 20 years of experience, that they were allowed to sit for the PE. But I thought that sunsetted back in 2019.
It did.
Yeah, I think it did.
I think if that's the case, it seems to me that it kind of causes confusion by having it, even the language still in there.
I agree with that, Alton. My copy of the printed copy of that statute has that line right above that paragraph that says it was repealed in June of 2019. And I wondered the same thing. I wondered why it's appeared. Well, and I don't know if you looked on the website, does it still appear, the paragraph with that note above it?
It does, but you can't really, based on where the note is, you can't tell whether that was applicable to number 3 or number 4.
Okay. Well, I agree with you. It does seem confusing to still have that appear in there unless there's a reason I'm not thinking of.
Well, like item number 3, they just took out completely and said deleted by 2007 amendment. And I would think that that's one of the things I wanted to do in this, is if we had the opportunity to clean this up, we could just have that same item number 4 and have it deleted by, it wouldn't be deleted by this amendment, but deleted and or sunsetted June 30th, 2019, no longer in effect.
You no longer show it maybe. And that makes sense
Yeah.
to me, because we're going to be dealing with the master's topic anyway in this round of changes that we're talking about. And so that we don't want to create confusion by leaving that language in there, I don't think.
I agree.
Well, I suspect Maria could answer that for us, because I bet it doesn't show up in the official document. We used to have a booklet of our law that was printed out for us some time ago, but I would think when a law sunsets, it's no longer a law anymore. It's no longer there.
That's correct. In the most recent version of the act that's available on Westlaw, that information, that language is not there. The deleted by. So you might just be looking at some older versions, but it's not in the current law.
Yeah, I'm looking at the website now on LexisNexis, and A4 is not there.
Okay, so we would suggest leaving the long accepted practice, not messing with that, and then the master's degree language has already been removed from the Tennessee Code annotated.
Yeah, so this would be A3.
Any other discussion?
On this topic, Steve, or the whole document?
The whole document, Robert. I was just trying to move us on.
I've got, let's see, which one did I say here? Oh, let's see. Trying to find it. We mentioned master's degrees again. Let's see, that's B. I was looking. Oh, I know which one I was. I'm sorry, it was in A, progressive experience. And I know we're trying to kind of flesh that out, but do we want to go down that path?
Well, again, one of the things I was trying to do, because we all agreed on the decoupling component of this too, and I was trying to incorporate that into this one document where we had decoupling and the ETAC as an alternative path to licensure into one element.
I get that, but I'm talking about 102 on the second page. It says in general progressive experience in the practice of engineering, and then we've got that definition and demonstrates progressive experience. Is that in Tennessee Code annotated? I'm gonna try to pull that up. It's what's in red in Tennessee Code annotated.
That's a rule, I think, Robert.
Well, I think we ought to keep it as a rule. Again, I go back to my fear is the more things we try to mess around with, the more opportunity we have for other things to jump in its place and become a target.
I agree with that. Under the law of unintended consequences, I think less is better.
Are you talking about taking the decoupling elements out of this? Because we had agreed last time to put them in.
I'm trying to see where the decoupling part comes in. Let me read that again. I may not have very well.
There are a couple of different places in there, Robert, where it does. One of them is in actually 62-2-401, where it talks about and with a specific record of 4 years or more of progressive experience on engineering, blah, blah, blah. Again, we go back to that definition of progressive experience. I changed that for what's in red in the lower part of that paragraph to just delete that part about the progressive experience and saying, after passing the FE, basically, and the PE, and then upon passing the exam and with a specific record of 4 years or more of experience, not necessarily progressive, but you can obtain it a number of different ways on engineering projects, blah, blah, blah. So I was, again, that's one area where I tried to eliminate that reference to progressive experience and put experience at a different location and not call it progressive. And then there's in section 0120-01-.10, I know there is a point in there. It's on 2 in section 2, the very last sentence of section 2, where in the existing law it says, unless otherwise noted above, an applicant's engineering experience must be obtained after graduation with a qualifying degree and completed by the date of the examination. So I was taking that out also.
Well, I think I'm confused then because so we're looking at changing Tennessee Code annotated and changing a rule as well.
Both.
Would it be simpler
If we don't, the rule will conflict with the law.
Would it be simpler if we just focused on the chapter 62 changes, which I think are on the first page?
Well, again, Steve, I understand what you're saying, but if we do, then that's the statute part of it. If we do that, then there will be components of the rules part of it that are in conflict.
I'm not suggesting we ignore the second page. I'm just suggesting we, for discussion purposes, we focus in one spot.
I'm sorry. I see what you're saying.
We're jumping around from chapter 62 in the code to rules in 0120. And I think we may be getting confused.
Steve, I think that's a good point. If we're looking at 62, which is basically the first page, the basically Alton moved a sentence position in that paragraph that I think accomplishes the decoupling. He just moved it from where the experience is required as a prerequisite to taking the exam to kind of the other side of that sentence about the exam, so that I think that works to do that. The only issue I have with it is I would want to leave the word progressive in there and say exactly what we said last time, and just with the different location that accomplishes your decoupling. But I would say still say 4 years or more of progressive experience, and just use the same words that we did, because it is still progressive experience that we're after. And we've got we've got that policy on the website that we refer to so much, and it uses that term progressive experience, and we use it in the rule. There's a couple of rules that use that term, so I would leave that progressive.
So the 62-2401A1 really is in essence, the same thing, except it takes away the having to have the experience before the exam. So in essence, it's a list. You do these things, you get your degree and your experience, and pass the exam. We're not saying you gotta have the experience first.
I think that's right. I think that's what his changes accomplishes, because before, that sentence about the experience was listed as something that had to be done to be admitted to the exam. And by him moving it after that sentence, it's just saying it kind of takes away that order of things. It looks like to me. And by the way, I'm assuming Maria has not reviewed Alton's markup for legal soundness and that sort of thing yet.
Well, that's why I was trying to say in East Tennessee hillbilly terms what we're trying to do, and Maria can tell us how we really need to say it.
Yes.
Yeah, I've reviewed, but I have not, just because this isn't the final, ready to go version, I haven't tediously, looked at it. But I certainly will and can. I think this is a great document. Lots of thought went into it. So Alton, you did a great job, and it'll be very helpful in, making the changes.
Yeah, and Ricky, going back to what you said, I don't have any objection to including the word progressive, where in the red part it says, and with a specific record of 4 years or more of, quote, progressive experience on engineering projects. I don't see any issue with that. Especially since later on in this discussion, we'll talk about eliminating that from the rules too.
Right.
And I
Also,
agree.
just one point. Oh, sorry, Robert. I was just
No,
going to
you
say
go ahead,
progressive experience. We're we have a rulemaking hearing on that tomorrow, so we are adding that to the rule tomorrow to kind of further define what constitutes progressive experience. I do agree. I think it's great to include that that term, you know, just kind of consistently throughout.
I will agree. I think progressive engineering experience, or progressive experience, needs to be there because I think that's what we want our applicants to have. And again, I'm like Steve. My hillbilly English is sometimes a little off, but I would read. I think I know what you're trying to get to, Alton. But it looks like when you say upon passing the examination, to me that means after passing the examination, then you got to do all these other things. I just think that sentence may need a little massaging. And again, that's the way I read it, that you have to pass the exam. And then those other things happen. I think we can probably make it a little cleaner by just saying something like the successful applicant will have passed an NCAAS examination, have 4 years of experience, and the other character, whatever. It looks like an order when I see the word upon, but that's just, again, I'm an engineer, so I'll leave that to people that understand words better than I do.
So that's the reason actually originally I left progressive out of there, is because that imply it, like, for example, for somebody that they do it the conventional way, they graduate from a 4-year accredited school, they set for and pass the FE, then they work 4 years, and then set for the PE. What that would allow them to do is, if we say upon passing the exam and with a specific record of 4 years or more progressive experience, that still implies that 4 years would have to be gathered, if we say progressive, after post-exam. That's why I just said having 4 years of experience, not progressive post-exam, just 4 years of experience, which could be gained, before the exam was administered or after the exam was administered.
Well, I still think the word progressive has to be there, because you can have a year of engineering experience, take the test, and then have 3 more years where your task becomes more progressive. And maybe what we just need to have in here is, instead of having it in words, have it in a bullet form that just says, again, the applicant will have, in no particular order, boom, 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 and leave it like that, so that we're not worrying about where a comma or period is as much. And say what we mean to say, maybe a little plainer. But I think progressive has to be in there, because we've got too many applicants that, we just need to have that in there.
One comment on that. I think I thought that the wording or the way that moved kind of worked as far as the order of things, but Robert, it may be more clear if we kind of clean it up and go with bullet points. I think bullet points could work pretty well, or whatever the legal equivalent of that is. But there is a little bit of order that we have to keep, and that's we don't want people taking the PE exam before they graduate.
Correct.
And
Yep.
so that order has to stay, and we don't want them taking the PE, I don't think, before they take and pass the FE, or is that okay?
I agree.
Okay, so So we would keep the order at least of saying that you need to have graduated and passed the FE to then to be admitted to the exam. And I thought moving the experience to the end like that kind of said, well, in the experience, I thought it could be interpreted that the experience could be after the exam. But you're right, maybe we want to be more explicit to say the experience can be, before or after the exam, or but you can take the exam before you reach the end of the experience, or maybe something more direct. But anyway, I interpreted when it was moved to kind of accomplish that. But maybe we want to be even more clear.
And I agree with that. And somehow that has got to be woven into this. And I think that's what attorneys do. Okay, Maria, are you following our discussion there? And I bet you're taking a lot of notes.
Yes, I am. I'm actually in the document, just kind of taking notes along with this as you guys are talking. So.
Okay, you think we've sufficiently described our intent for 401A1?
Yes, I do. I think I have enough information there.
Okay, then I'd suggest we move on to Alton's proposal for A5.
Which I guess now, Steve, technically would be A3. Since 3 was deleted and 4 was deleted previously. Maria, is that correct? This would now be 62-2-401A3?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And again, in keeping with the same format that we have for engineering, I tried to adapt the requirements that we all discussed and agreed on for ETAC using that same format.
And this is what we've been talking about for some time now, where a ETAC accredited technology curriculum of 4 years or more would be approved by the board after the applicant receives a master's degree from a EAC accredited, from a program with an undergraduate EAC program and with 8 years of experience.
Do they have to take the FE?
I think so, but I don't know how we get that in. We need to get that in there.
That's in there. It's in there.
Where is it?
It's about halfway down towards the right after talking about graduate from having that year's experience. It's the next thing. It says, and who has passed an examination prepared by NCAAS in the fundamentals of engineering shall be admitted to an exam prepared by NCAAS in the principles and practice of engineering.
Okay.
That just copied the language from the previous paragraph for the EAC degree. So I kind of like that.
Yeah,
Using the
sorry,
same-
I missed the different words there. My fault.
It's okay.
Can you guys let me know where you are? Sorry,
We're
We
on
are on,
we are on
62-401A5, which will become A3, Maria.
okay,
Part
got it.
1.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
any other comments on the I section? As it's printed, so no, there's no confusion. It's 62-401A5 lowercase I.
I didn't see anything to change. I thought it was kind of ready for the legal check. Maybe I missed something, but it looked good to me.
Okay, I'm moving on to double I if there's no other comments.
And the reason for this is to try to address some of the comments maybe that Rob made last time about individuals that have had long experience with an engineering technology degree and have been working in the field for a long time before this law became available to them, that gave them some credit for the years of experience that they've accumulated up to this point. And again, look, this was just my attempt at trying to be fair or reasonable about it, but I would welcome any editorial thoughts or comments.
Hey, Alton, it's Robert. The only thing I would say is, didn't we just pass this rule change where we gave people experience because, but didn't we just limit it to 1 year of experience for 3 years worked? And maybe we just need to just say that reference also includes ETAC degrees as well.
Wasn't that for co-op type experience, Robert, or am I thinking of something else?
No, you're right. But what we said was these people that have been working under a PE doing progressive engineering for every 3 years of that work, we'll give them 1 year of experience. But I thought we just limited it to one year. So if they've been working 20 years, we just gave them 1 year.
That's right.
But it was, Steve, in response to the kind of the abandonment of the co-op, the official co-op programs, because that's what our co-op rule basically says.
I think the co-op rule says that if they're in an accredited and authorized co-op program, they get up to 1 year of experience credited towards their 4 years of experience requirement.
Right. And but again, Alton, that's why we did that rule change to kind of mimic that somewhat. But you don't get to have four co-ops and count 4 years based on that either. You can only do that one time.
Yeah, and quite frankly, we didn't ask this question, and I'm not sure it exists, but I don't know if engineering technology programs have approved co-op programs. But again, in this one, I think Rob was the one that brought up, and Rob, I may be telling this wrong, it may have been somebody else, but that you had experience with people maybe even in your own organization that had engineering technology degrees that worked under an engineer as a designer and may have had 12, 15 years of experience, and that we wanted to do something that recognized that experience. When this law or this, I guess this is law, when this statute is changed. So we can do whatever you want to. It doesn't Again,
Well,
all I was trying to do is make an accommodation for people that have long experience already.
Yeah. Robert brings up a good point. And the reason we added a paragraph that in addition to the co-op, this was just for this person and his employer came before our board, and this person worked their way through school, taking 8 or 9 years by going to night school, and so was working full time, and we wanted some kind of recognition of that experience. And what we decided was that 3 such years of that could be we could give them 1 year of experience credit for that, but it wouldn't be any more than that, whether it was 3, 5, 6, 9, whatever. 1 year was the limit. And I kind of like, and that's for experience before you get your degree, which otherwise you have to get all your experience after your qualifying degree. And I kind of like what Robert's saying. If we can just fold it into that, I think that's a rule. If we can just fold it into that rule, it's kind of looking at this like for a technology, for an ETAC degree, the master's is kind of the qualifying degree, so it's kind of equivalent, Robert, to that case. It's somebody's work experience before their qualifying degree. And so that might be kind of a more consistent way of doing it, is allowing 1 year credit. Or
yeah, thanks for putting that in a better place than I could. But that was my point: is we don't address that in the law, the Tennessee Code Annotated, for an ABET degree. Why would we do it for an ETAC degree? And we've got it in a rule, so let's just put whatever, if we have to change that rule to add ETAC or however this Tennessee Code Annotated is adopted, let's do it that way, instead of adding something to the law that's not currently there. Kind of makes it stand out a little bit.
that makes
Okay,
sense.
Robert, I'm not sure about which one you're talking about. The only thing I see that I can find in here that resembles what you're talking about is under 0120-01-.10. I guess that's 1F. Programs that allow credit for work experience and experiential learning, with the exception of cooperative education programs, or are not part of an institution that's accredited or recognized as a degree-granting institution of higher learning within a national territory in the United States, are not considered by the board to be acceptable curricula. I don't know where the thing that you're talking about. I don't see it. Yeah, Ricky.
Go to right below that, 2A3. 2A3 says 3 years or more qualified experience obtained prior to graduation under the direct supervision of a licensed engineer. That's more equivalent to what we're talking about here with this technology paragraph.
See, I don't even see a 2A3.
So you were in 1F. You were under 1F, what you just read.
Right.
Then there's a 2 with an A and a B, and the A has a 1, 2, 3 under it. And
Yeah,
whether
yours must be newer than mine, because I don't have that.
Okay, well, it's with the law that Robert's talking about that we passed. It was when after that visit to our board is just after that, and it deals specifically with full-time work experience before a degree, and so it's in addition to the co-op. It's totally different. It's different than the co-op. It's in addition to that topic, but it would seem to fit here.
The one I was working in, I will apologize, and I must not have been working off the most current version. The version I've got was the July 18th revised version, And it does not have, mine doesn't have that in there under the engineering, education experience requirements for engineers.
Okay, it's in there now. It's, yeah, I'm looking at November 2018 and it's in there.
Okay.
But I think, to sum that up, I agree with Robert. I think we can deal with this in that rule by just expanding, if we need to, that language about progressive experience in that rule. And if we do that, I don't think we'll need this paragraph. The
Yeah,
double.
I agree. Again, like I say, I apologize for not having that most current version. I did not know that was in there, or it's not in mine. So,
Gotcha.
if I'd known that, I probably wouldn't have gone to this exercise. So, this is good. So, eliminate the double I section of that then. Correct.
Yes, that's what makes sense to me.
Which means that we'd have to add something over in the rules section to address that.
Correct.
Okay.
Ricky, would you
Maria,
give the complete reference for that rule you were talking about?
Yes, it is 0120-01-.10 2 in parentheses, A in parentheses, and then 3.
Okay, thanks. Maria,
hey Maria,
did you follow us on that?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. The same thing, Steve. I want to make sure that Maria was on board with us on that.
Yes, I am.
And that number 2 that I just read out, the 2 in parentheses is all the ways that you can earn 1 year of progressive experience for things like a master's degree or co-op, or again, this going to work before you graduate and working. So it seems like this could be added to that list as a way they could get a year, a recognized 1 year of progressive experience before they get their master's after getting their technology degree.
Okay, so that would be like 2A4.
It could be 2A4. I think that could be, yes, a way to do it. And I kind of like Robert. It seems like we could be consistent with saying 3 years of experience after an ETAC degree, but before the master's can get you a maximum of 1 year. You know that. So I think it would be most clear as the number 4 separate, but it would be very similar to 3.
Okay. So do you want me to copy that whole, what's currently little I under the statute? Is that whole paragraph going there?
I think the single I, we said we were going to keep that as A3 under the statute, and
Okay.
then the double
Okay.
I can come out. The double I is what dealt with this,
Gotcha.
and that can come out because it'll be dealt with by the rule.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
I would point out, and not that I'm arguing this case, but if one is trying to allow a technology graduate has a lot of experience, sees this change, gets their master's, being able to add only 1 year for, many years of experience, still having to have 7 more years, could be viewed as still a pretty big hurdle.
That's a good point, Steve. I think maybe we play with that after we get a draft written, and the rationale behind that is, we only require 4 years with the EAC degree, and now we're requiring 8 years for the ETAC plus the masters. Do we want to write in more than 1 year there somehow? That's a good question, a good thing to consider.
And that's kind of what I was attempting to do with that next section. But
Alton,
remember too.
Yeah, I think even if we do, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, the other element of this, and Steve, I agree with you. I mean, for the people that are immersed in this right now, which is really the 4 of us and the staff, we're thinking about one thing. But remember too, we've got to take this out to the engineering community for their review and consideration, or comments at least. And my I guess perspective is, we're going to get a lot of pushback if we try to relax this too much. And so I wasn't as worried about, making unreasonable allowances as I was just trying to give, the 8 years total experience is what we settled on, that we thought was not unreasonable. Plus, they still have to take and pass the FE and the PE. If we wanted to give them credit in other areas, I guess I'm okay with that. But I think that makes it less palatable to our own engineering community.
I agree with you. In a lot of ways, we're just trying to sort of walk the line here, and not fall off on either side, and reach something that's satisfactory for all our existing constituents and future constituents.
And Alton, I think we have so 2 things probably. Number one, I agree with you. That's why I'm trying to say, let's not put very much in a law change. Let's address what we need to address. And if we want to, but then I also think from a consistency standpoint, we address whether it's 1 year, 2 years, or 6 years. I mean, whatever the number is, let's address that in a rule where we've got the other rule already there. Because I just don't believe, I mean, you start putting too many things in this law, it gets a lot more convoluted. I mean, it goes to a legislative process. The more things you have in it, the more opportunities people have to interfere is not what I'm trying to say, but to get in the middle of that legislative process. A rulemaking hearing is a staff and practitioner process, which has a lot fewer hands in it, and we've got some ability then to keep, to plead our case a little bit more. Whatever. I'm stumbling right now, but you understand what I'm saying. It just,
I do, and I agree.
One other thought I've had, and there again, this may be getting too much detail at this point, but if there is a concern about, let's just call them the well-established technology graduate with, as far as experience, that that we could always write some different language like we did a long time ago when the engineering law first came available. You know, there was some sort of grandfathering. So if we determine that there is a desire, we could write that in that wouldn't last very long, and then set up the law and rules for the students that are in process now or just recently out of school, so they know, I'm going to get a technology degree, I got to go ahead and get a master's, and I got 8 years to go. Where somebody that's had that technology degree for 20 or 30 years, you know, maybe there's a different rule for somebody like that. So that's just something to think about.
Steve, what if we, for the next iteration, we kind of, on that rule, write a number 4 that would be a framework for this technology, a progressive experience question, and let us all kind of think about it and come up with ideas for the next go round.
And I'm not suggesting that we do that, that we create that grandfathering, if you will, but that is a possibility if it became necessary for whatever reason. Okay, so we're finished with the first page. Maria understands where we're headed, and we took out the double I. Now we're in the rules. Is there any comments on I guess it's what Alton proposed as 1D? Is that where we are now? That would be the top of his second page.
Yes, Steve, that's correct.
I don't see a problem with that first paragraph, number 1, except for the reference now to the statute, it would be A3 and not A5.
I've made that change, and I was going to ask too, because we took out little I, well, double little I from that. Is that going to affect the way this reads, or what are y'all thoughts on that?
Well, hey, Maria, this is Alton. I would just soon you reformat this in the appropriate format anyway. So as long as you understand the elements that we're trying to introduce, you can subscribe a format to it however you think is appropriate.
Certainly. I was just going to ask, now that we've referenced that what's going to be A3, and because we took out the double I and put it down in another section of the rule, and A4 down below, I was just wondering if that affects the way this reads, because you're referencing A3 saying we strictly adhere to. I just want to make sure that.
I think that reference is still okay, because the single I has all the detail in it about the degree, the bachelor's degree and the master's and the experience. It has all of that in there, and I took it, so I think the reference still applies and it will still be correct. And I think the reason for the reference is just not to have to repeat all of that in this paragraph.
Okay, awesome.
The comment about the 2 academic years prior to accreditation, is that a standard thing?
Oh, yes, it is, Steve.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Yes, that's taken directly out of our existing language.
Okay.
Well,
Are you ready to move on down to next paragraph, 1D?
Which, yeah, and by the way, just for clarification, that the thing behind the parentheses, parenthetical sentence behind that D, what is now D in our book, our existing rules, will become E, and E will be eliminated. That you can see that in this section. But for those of you that don't have it out and open in front of you, what E 0120-01-.101E currently says is an engineering technology program, whether 4 or 2 years in length, is not considered by the board to be an acceptable curriculum. That'll be deleted. And what is now D will become E instead. And this proposed paragraph 0120-01-.101D will take its place. And again, one of the primary reasons for this is the incorporation of the decoupling.
Okay, sorry for the delay on this, Alton and everyone. I was just looking at our rulemaking hearing tomorrow, actually amid this section right here. So I don't know how well this piece is going to fit into all that. If you all want to reference the red line I sent out, because this is where we define the practical application and theory, where that's all defined right there with the new rule that hopefully will be enacted.
Maria, this is Alton. Was your version actually a red line version? Because what I got an original and a blue line version, I think.
So yeah, with the red line is going to be the one with the blue. We just use blue for new language, and then we use red for like language that's being deleted. But if it's the blue, that's going to be new language. So that'll show the edits for you.
Okay. Good, and thank you.
Sorry if that's confusing.
Alton, I'm looking at
Hey,
this.
Ricky.
I was looking at this paragraph 1D that you've got in red will now become E with this amendment, and wondering why you added the last sentence. But I think what you are saying is that what that really is trying to say is to clarify to people who may have a question about it that you're not going to be able to get registered without having the experience, just because you can take it early. And so this was I'm thinking you added that sentence just as a statement that to clarify that. I'm not sure you need it, but I'm not saying we don't want to say it.
Well, the heading of the section is education and experience requirements. So I just wanted to clarify that while what we're doing is setting this up to where a person after they graduate from a 4-year accredited school, they can sit for the fundamentals of engineering exam and the PE. However, even if they pass those two, the only way that you'd be considered for registration is if you've done the requisite education, you've done the exam, and you've met the experience requirements.
Yeah, but I know we say in the above that that this references and in the statute that they have to have experience. So I'm not sure that last sentence is legally necessary, but it's like I don't know. I could argue both ways about whether to have it or not.
Well, we can let Maria assist us with that decision, can't we?
That's what I'm thinking. Is it legally? Is it better to kind of repeat that there, or illegally is that already covered somewhere else and leave it covered somewhere else?
Yeah, it's covered under Section 2, Ricky. Part 2, about the experience requirements. The only difference is we're also modifying that to not require it to be progressive post FE and pre-PE.
Right, but I'm just talking about it, not necessarily just that exception or that. I'm talking about just the fact we've got experience as one of the three legs of the stool described as a requirement both in the statute and in the rule. So I'm just not sure that has to be repeated here.
Well, one of the other things that we have had some concern about is entities who apply, like say for example, they go to Kentucky, and right now we don't have decoupling, but Kentucky does. So if they go up to Kentucky and say, hey, look, we're a licensed professional, and we've got our PE in Kentucky, and they don't have the requisite experience, our rules do require 4 years of experience. Even the rewritten, if we restructure these, if we accept these restructured recommendations, it still requires 4 years of experience. So you're right. I mean, that would be covered elsewhere. I'm not sure that we can overstate it. I was a little afraid we could understate it.
Gotcha. Yeah, And I think I'm happy with what Steve said. Let Maria kind of look at that and see if she thinks that would be a good thing to add or unnecessary.
I'll be happy to see if that language is redundant or if it's necessary for clarity's sake. But yeah, I'd like to look at it a little bit more closely and then provide that whenever I give the final version to you all. But I'll make a note that, you know, they're kind of going back and forth on this.
Okay, we ready to move on?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, the next section, that's the one where Robert was asking whether we wanted to get into the progressive engineering, progressive experience in 012-01-.102 in A. Any more comments on that?
this is Robert. I mean, didn't know what this rulemaking, I mean, that's part of what we do, don't we? We define what that is. So I don't know that this is necessary.
Tell us again your logic.
This
You
may
don't
take
see down to me.
psychiatrist help as well. You talking about my logic or Alton's logic?
Alton
Okay.
logic, sorry.
Well, no, this won't take a psychiatrist in. If you're taking mine, it probably will.
Okay, let me again. I've been through probably 4 of my own edits here. I'm having to go back and stretch my memory to remember why I did this, and I think this had something to do with incorporating some of the things that we seem to continuously talk about when we're reviewing applicants, and incorporating some of the things that are proposed in our definition for engineering just for clarification. So, and again, I have no pride in ownership. We can eliminate or delete as much of that as you want to. But hang on a second. Yeah, the only thing I was trying to do here is to offer or give us maybe a little more thorough guideline in what we consider some of the things even we've talked about today about experience and the experience an applicant has acquired, and again, trying to incorporate some of the things that are in other parts of maybe not the laws and rules, but the definition and some of the stuff that's in the reference manual. So take it out, leave it in. Either way, it's okay. I have no pride in authorship here.
I've got a question for Maria on this. Something in my memory says that we were doing some rule making that expanded some language on progressive experience. Am I remembering that incorrectly?
No, that's what I've been talking about. The rulemaking hearing tomorrow is on that. And so that's why I was saying some of this might not line up quite as you all see it whenever, you know, the rule gets approved that we're having the hearing on tomorrow.
Do we have
So the rule
that?
change,
Yeah,
you
and that's
should.
what
Michael
should have.
brought it out.
I've got it, Ricky, and that's the point I was bringing up, is seeing what sheet we put out, because we basically list that sheet that we use,
That's what I was thinking.
convert it to a rule. So we don't really, I don't think we need to define it again here.
Yeah, if we're adding all of that information, that kind of, and I'm not looking at it. I'm looking for it. But yeah, I think we're already doing. I think that accomplishes what Alton was wanting to do here. So I think that's. I guess we don't need what Alton has marked up if we're adding that description of the progressive experience.
Yeah, and
I would agree with that.
If that's the case and we eliminate that, then paragraphs A and B can be incorporated into one paragraph, which it kind of is under section 2 anyway.
Yeah, I think Alton, that what Maria's got in the rulemaking, like Robert said, it's got even more detail than your paragraph that you added. It kind of repeats what we've got on that.
Yeah, I agree. I wrote this before we got the Maria's, as I call it, blue line copy, but because I did this back in, I started it, I think, in February, and the fourth edit of it was in mid-March. So this was a little while before we got Maria's proposed rulemaking changes.
Yeah, okay. So I think we've got that covered with what Maria did.
I do think if we do merge or blend A and B back together as it exists right now, we do need to stipulate what I've got in the beginning of what is now B for graduates from an ABET EAC accredited undergraduate engineering program, because in what is now C and will become B, we're saying for graduates from an ABET ET accredited engineering program. So we're differentiating between the two.
Yeah. Do you want to leave it B and C, since it might be clear having B be the EAC degree and C is the ETAC degree? That's probably just a format question.
Yeah, if we're going to take all that stuff out of A,
yeah,
then.
Gentlemen, this is Michael, and it sounds like, if I may interrupt just for a second, it sounds like this topic, or there's a couple of things that keep kind of popping up here, and a lot of that has to do with tomorrow's rulemaking hearing. If I may offer a suggestion of potentially tabling this discussion until next month after the rulemaking hearing, where there would be some more clarity on how to proceed, I feel like at this point we might just be spinning our wheels.
Michael, I think maybe we want to take it a step further than that. This is really kind of the first time I think Maria's had an opportunity to look at this with much depth. She already kind of understands the other things that we want to change and modify in this. Why don't we wait until after the rulemaking hearing and then let Maria take this document and edit it post incorporation of the items that are in the rulemaking hearing. Just knock out the things that are no longer pertinent that may be included in my document, and just make the other edits as appropriate.
Well,
Happy
I can't
to do
speak
that.
okay.
I'm sorry, Michael.
Nope. I was saying that I couldn't speak to your workload.
I can certainly do that and have that document to you.
Rob, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Barrett?
Did you have a comment?
I just said I thought that would be a good idea. Might also be good if we could send it out a few days before we meet again, and maybe even email comments. I think putting it off until you've done the rulemaking thing and having Maria, she understands what we're trying to do here, having her put it in some language and then let us look at it.
Okay, well, Maria has said she'll do that, so I guess we can move on. Is there anything else anyone wants to say about our technology discussion?
Alton, thank you for doing that. That was fantastic amount of work to put that together and put it in front of us.
Oh,
I second that,
thank
Alton.
you.
That's really a great document, so.
Ditto from me. Thank you, Alton.
You're all welcome. Thank you. I kind of think that's maybe all of our jobs to do stuff like this, and I'm glad for the chance to do it. And plus, listen, again, these are great comments, and that's why I love this organization is the things that have been edited and added and deleted today, I think are going to make this a much more concise and clear document, and hopefully more with some level of explanation from all of us and Casey, maybe even more palatable to our own profession. So I'm grateful for everybody's review comments today.
Okay, do we want to move on to discuss master's degree?
Let's please move on.
I don't know. I didn't have a master's, an updated master's degree document to send you all. So in keeping with the theme of the request that was given to me a while ago, I kept this on the agenda so that it's not lost sight of. But if there is conversation to be had, then please feel free.
Hey, Robert, this is Alton. Were you the one proposing maybe draft language for the master's degree?
Yeah, my thing was proposed last month, just as a framework where we had, and this master statute degree and rules. I assume Maria, you did the edit on this, or pulled up what it was, or Michael?
Yeah, I sent out a document today. There was a question from last meeting about whether or not this was going to be a statute change or a rule change. So I just pointed out like our current law as it stands and wanted you all to see what needed to be amended.
So, and Michael, thank you for keeping that on the agenda, because I think that definitely helps us with visibility. Kind of coming from a who, what, when environment, that helps. But my proposal on the master's degree was that I probably need to get people that understand curricula and what's involved if we decide to go down the path that I presented last time, because that path was basically would marry a master's degree with a undergraduate degree or multiple undergraduate degrees. And I think it's worthwhile, but I don't have enough insight into what that is to be able to write that up. I just, not very academic.
That makes sense from the information you put in front of us last time. That does make sense. And Maria, the document you sent, so do we, you may have just said this, do we draw the conclusion that the masters will take the statute change as well as a rule change?
Yes. So the statute references specifically I cannot say this word. I'm so sorry. Baccalaureate
Yes.
degree, not bachelor's, but baccalaureate degree. So that's so specific that I think the statute does need to be changed. But my suggestion is that, last time you all brought up the Louisiana rules and how it kind of had conversion tables almost for, if you had this and you could do this, and it was very detailed and kind of lengthy. So my suggestion would be to make that simple change in the statute to just add language saying that master's degree could qualify, and then expand in the rule on how specifically you all want to do that.
And Maria, this is Robert. I think that's perfect. I think, again, going back to my original statement some time ago, the less we put in the law and then we use a rule to flesh that out, the better we are, especially when there's so many permutations that can come from this.
Well, in that section that Maria listed there, 622401, that's the section that we were revising to include technology. So it could be further revised to mention the masters that could be fleshed out in the rule, right?
That's great. Yeah. I'll make sure whenever I get you all that document back that I kind of include, merge what Robert's working on, what Alton's working on, so that it's kind of all fluid.
And it does sound like we probably want to use language like could instead of would. I think from the direction Robert's going, there may be some combinations of undergraduate and master's degrees that are okay, and there may be some that are not. Correct? Is that right, Robert? Is that where you think this is headed?
Yeah, I think that's right. But again, I think we also need to get other heads together to determine what's up, because I just honestly don't know what kind of academic rigor is required in some of those. And I don't want, it probably needs to be, a couple people practitioner, a couple people academic, so that we're not overwhelmed with everything.
I would suggest putting language in the statute to say that just gives the board authority and discretion to prescribe what requirements will work by rule. So that you have the latitude, you have the authority under the statute, but then latitude they're going to rule. So it's very clear, and it's not compulsory language of shall do this or must.
That sounds good.
And while we're talking about that, Maria, is there anything that we need to do in the Tennessee Code relating to foreign degrees, or a foreign degree that's from a Washington Accord country? I guess it already meets the requirements since it is a 4-year degree, right?
So my understanding of that was, I'm sorry, all these issues are kind of running into each other for me, but I do remember us talking about that. And I do remember that it wasn't in statute or needed to be changed, but I'm kind of getting blurry on the details of that. So we had all these different issues. So was one of you working on foreign degree language specifically, or do we table that?
No, that's my assignment. But
Okay.
I guess the reason I bring it up is because as as you're drafting, the Tennessee code changes, I'm just trying to make sure if that needs to be a part of that, but I think we're already approving foreign degrees
That's what I was
under
going to say. I
the,
think that's spelled out in the rule specifically. Because we have that path of, non-event and then evaluated by Dr. Smith.
okay, so we don't need to do anything in the Tennessee code on that.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I'll double check, but I do remember already looking at that issue for you guys. So it should be just the rule and kind of how as it stands.
What it looked, Steve, it looks like last meeting that we were thinking, it may be okay the way it reads because of our flexibility in evaluating non-ABET degrees, but it looked like we were all thinking at that time that a rule change that just clarified acceptance of the Washington Accord would be helpful. I don't know if we still feel that way, but it looks like that's kind of where we landed last meeting.
And then,
And
can you all clarify? I was just going to ask, is the Washington Accord issue, does that come up with the masters as well? Because I remember talking about the Louisiana rules that also reference the Washington Accord. I think Robert was talking about that.
No, I don't think the Washington Accord doesn't come up with Louisiana rules. It's the Washington Accord is, I think, all on its own in an evaluation thing. Now, I think what I said maybe when I was talking to some people from Louisiana, maybe we had that discussion as well, but it's not. I don't believe it's in their rule.
So it just deals, Washington Accord just deals with foreign degrees, correct?
Ricky, based on everything I know, that's exactly what it looks like because it's a signatory document from different countries, and basically says we will follow a set procedure of accreditation for our colleges and universities. And I think NCAA and then different organizations can come in and audit that procedure, and they open themselves up to audit, just like ABET would. But it's
and NCAAS and ABET are members.
yeah, they're signatories on the document, or members or whatever you want to say.
Well, one of my assignments that I didn't complete was to talk to Maria about this. So, Maria, I guess I'm gonna have to try again.
That's totally fine. I'm happy to discuss and, whenever it works for you.
So as far as today, I guess another thing we need to talk about is our next scheduled meeting will be in June. Are we going to have another committee meeting before June, or what do we think?
There's, Mr. King, there's also the matter of Southern Zone voting.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, Michael, from your standpoint and the department standpoint, are we making significant progress? Do we need to have schedule a meeting in May to keep on? What do you think?
No, I think that progress is definitely being made. As for significant, I can only speak to what I know. And right now, I feel like you all are making excellent progress, especially given the amount of time that this has been a discussion. Maria, I think this is a question more for Maria in terms of process in that obviously whatever gets done needs to be done within a certain time frame to be considered in the next legislative session. So, Maria, what would the deadline be for that?
I was just going to say
Obviously-
another committee meeting would be contingent on that deadline. So I'll have to get with Laura Martin, within the department and see. I remember last year it was like, I want to say early June, possibly late May, but I'll confirm and then kind of, get a feel on that deadline.
Okay. All right. Now, if it's all right with the committee, I can send out an email at a later date once we get that confirmation, and that deadline obviously being the contingent portion of that, we can send out an email to offer up a couple of dates to see which would be the most viable, or we can always go ahead and set a date and then we have the ability to cancel. In my opinion, I think setting a date with the ability to cancel will be much easier than arranging everyone's schedule for a date later down the road.
If the governor lifts his executive order, does that mean we will need to meet in Nashville?
I think if the executive order is lifted, it's my understanding that the current executive orders expire at the end of April. My understanding of moving forward is that there will always, I think perpetually now, be a virtual component which is permissible in these, but if the executive orders are lifted, then yes, that would allow for meeting in Nashville.
It would allow for it, but it doesn't rule out a WebEx meeting either, or a committee meeting?
No, sir. It may be that from here on out, we do allow there will be a digital accessibility for the meetings, especially for participants who, I think there have been some participants, not necessarily on this board, but kind of, where we go one, we go all in reg boards. So it sounds like there may be a virtual component which will be accessible moving forward, which would provide members of committees and boards to attend these meetings virtually. That would be an option, though. It wouldn't be a requirement.
So you want to look toward having a WebEx meeting in May?
I think we can set a meeting for May, and depending on whether or not those executive orders get lifted, we can set it for both in person and WebEx. WebEx obviously taking precedent until we know otherwise.
Hey, Michael, this is Alton. Just my 2 cents worth. These intermediate engineering committee meetings that we're having, this one's been, a little over 3 hours now. I hate to have people drive in from Memphis and Knoxville to go to a 3-hour meeting. It makes sense, though, if we're doing a full board meeting the next day to have everybody there. And Lord knows I really miss doing the in-person meetings. I just like them so much better. But I just hate to have people drive in that distance for a 3-hour meeting and just have to come around and go back home. Only on the intermediate meetings. So I do like the idea of a virtual meeting for the intermediate engineering committee meetings. I'll do whatever anybody else wants to do. I'm the one that doesn't have to travel, me and Rob.
Sure thing, Alton. And I think, and I remember back when we started doing these every month, that I think the caveat was, we don't want to make every month a habit simply because of that reason. But while there's something pressing to get done, I think it's good to have the ability to be accessible, and if we have to meet every month to get something moved, then I think that's a good thing. But again, I like your proposal. I think that the intermediate meetings, as long as everyone's okay with that, the ones that are in between the regular scheduled bi-monthly meetings, we can continue to keep digital.
Let me throw out a date and let's see what we can, or do you want to do that, Michael?
No, sir, I would let you go ahead and throw out the date, because I guarantee you, my schedule's busy, but there are a lot of things that I can move that you can't.
Well, I notice on May the 5th, there's another State of the Council meeting at 2. What about if we followed that up again at 3 Eastern time? May the 5th.
I won't be able to do May 5th. I have another board meeting for the accountancy board that day.
Okay. What about Thursday the 6th?
That works.
Are you still?
You want my that works for me.
Are you still thinking
I'm free
3
in the
p.m.?
morning.
3 p.m. is okay with me, but I'm just throwing out a date right now.
I potentially have a
Well,
meeting at 3 Eastern that day that would need to go to. If it could be mid-morning, I could do that. We're talking May the 6th, correct?
Yes, I could also do morning. I don't know for those of you that have many more commitments than I do, is, we probably would need to set a length of time if we're going to do it in the morning, because I'm sure just like today, we can go on, but we probably don't have any work appointments now, but if we do it in the morning, you might.
Hey, Steve, this is Alton. I think we're getting close here, closer than we have been on most of this stuff. And after the rulemaking hearing, and with Maria's modifications to what I propose, and I'm not sure that the next meeting will be necessarily a 3+ hour meeting. So I would offer, say, 9 o'clock Central Time, 10 o'clock your time, and hope that this would be about a 2-hour meeting.
On May the 6th. What does everybody else think?
That works for me. And yeah, usually in the in-between meetings, we don't have applications to go over. So that works for me. And I appreciate the making it virtual, because for these intermediate meetings, because now we got to start using all our post-pandemic muscles that we've grown from doing all this virtual meeting the whole time. So we got to use all this stuff.
Rob, is that okay with you?
Yes, sir. That's good by me. Morning's better. Earlier the better.
Sorry, I got sidetracked. What day and time? I'm sorry. We're moving offices in one of our offices, and I got an update on something while we were sitting here. That's my fault.
Robert, May the 6th in the morning at 10 o'clock our time.
Yeah, that's perfect for me. May the 6th at 10. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. I have that
Alton
on.
said,
I have that on.
hopefully a couple
Sorry,
hours
go ahead.
long.
Hey, Michael, will you get Laura to send out an Outlook meeting request for that?
I will do. She has. Yes, I have it on my calendar, and I'll ask her to create the WebEx so that we can get that sent out.
Okay, now let's deal with.
Sorry, can I just say one thing? This is Maria. I was just going to say that just a little bit of clarification about the process of it all. So the statute changes obviously have to come first, and those will be proposals for next legislative session, and then we can work on, I know we're working on the rule language we want right now, but we do have time to kind of tease out what we want that to say exactly, because rule changes are going to come after the legislative changes have taken place.
Right.
Maria, this is Alton. I'm thinking more about I know we wanted to have this done by June if possible, which would be after this legislative session is over. But the reason we wanted to do that was be able to get it out to the societies and start having meetings and getting input and feedback and have the opportunity to go explain across the state why and how we're doing this.
I think that's great. I think that's a great point and good approach.
Anything else before we go to voting issues at NCWS? Okay, so we need to talk about Southern Zone voting. Is that the issue?
Yes, and that is next Thursday.
Hey, Ricky, are we electing officers? I know that I've talked to a couple of candidates. Are they doing elections for Southern Zone in this meeting?
Yes. Yeah, let me, this is on the, I'll give a rundown. It's on the NCEES website when you go to the zone. But for the Southern Zone, for vice president, there's 3 candidates. There's a Stephen Hyde from Florida, professional surveyor. Timothy Rickborn from South Carolina, who's a PE. He's been the treasurer of NCES the last 3 years. And then Andrew, how do you say it, Robert? Zutel.
Zetwild.
Say it again.
Zetwild.
Zetwild. Okay. And he is from North Carolina, is a professional surveyor. So those are the 3 candidates for vice president, zone vice president. And then the assistant zone vice president, there's 2. I think we know both of these people. Bobby Bailly from Texas, who's a PE, and Ivan Hoffman from Arkansas. He's a surveyor.
I remember when those 2 were running against each other last time, and I think they had to leave the room and come back in and give presentations about themselves. When I think Ivan won that time by a very, very narrow margin, if I'm not mistaken.
He did.
I know both.
They were running
I know both Tim treasurer, wasn't it?
Yes, Southern Zone treasurer.
One other thing I will say, I know both Tim and Andy. Tim, as treasurer, I served on the finance committee, and Andy was I guess he was the committee chairman, but Tim was the treasurer, and both of those 2 guys are excellent people. Are they running for the same? Are they both running for the same office?
Yes, they're both running for the Southern Zone VP.
Wow.
Which I guess kind of puts them on a path to become the NCEES president.
Yeah.
And I haven't read everything that there is on the website about these people, but I did feel like we knew Tim Rickborn and Andy Zetwiler from the last election. And then I knew we knew these 2 for the assistant VP. So do we want to maybe go down go down to each person and see if you have a preference one way or the other?
It's going to be kind of tough for me because I like both of those guys. I mean, Tim is in more of a national leadership role than Andy is.
Yep.
And he's been in those positions a little longer. Just from my perspective, I don't know the third candidate, but just from my perspective, as far as leadership, I think Tim would maybe edge Andy out, in my opinion, as my favorite candidate.
Okay. Steve or Robert, have y'all got a view on that election?
I don't.
No, I don't. I mean, I know that Rick Bourne's kind of, wasn't he the treasurer of NCAAs?
Yes.
Has been for, I think, 3 years, Robert.
And wasn't he one of the ones that kind of drank the Kool-Aid on how much dang money they had?
Well, actually, I thought that same thing. And as y'all know, I mean, at a couple of those NCAA Southern Zone conferences, I've raised the issue about why do we have that money? And he did a really good job of explaining that to me, where even I could understand it. When we met last year, the finance committee met multiple times, only once in person, obviously, but he did a terrific job of explaining that. And the philosophy is that once they get through with the rollout for all of the CBT exams, that money would no longer be essential. That reserve would no longer be essential, and that they would be developing a plan for it, some mechanism to redistribute it out.
Well, I don't know. I think he's had his chance in the sun. The other guy's probably the guy from North Carolina. Is he a surveyor?
He is.
Yeah, see, that's another thing. I don't know if I want to vote for a surveyor necessarily, even though I do a little bit of it. Let's see. Just trying to see here. I don't care. Whoever you guys think, I'm okay with either one of them.
Steve, do you have a opinion on that one?
No, I don't, because I don't remember even talking to either one of them.
Okay. Rob, I don't know if you know either of these guys or been on the website looking or been getting emails or whatever. But have you got any inclination one way or another from what I describe about them? Rob, you are on mute. If you're still there.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Go.
It's okay. So I didn't know whether you may know these guys or have read about them or whatever, but the choice for the Southern Zone Vice President, for the guys I read, Stephen Hyde, a Florida surveyor that I don't think any of us know. Timothy Rigborn is a South Carolina PE who has been treasurer of national NCES the last 3 years. And then Andy Zetweiler, North Carolina surveyor, who was a committee chair for, I guess, the finance committee chair. Is that right, Alton?
Yeah, that's right, Ricky.
Okay, and Alton served with both of these guys on that finance committee and or had experience with them both. And he's got slight favors Tim slightly over Andy for this position, which is kind of a national position.
Although I will say this in fairness, and it may change my position a little bit, is Andy actually reached out personally to ask for my vote and support from the Tennessee Licensing Board. I have not had that from Tim. That does mean something to me. So I could go either way. I mean, it's 1A and 1B as far as I'm concerned. I do like Andy and in his position as chairman of that finance committee. He was terrific. He was a great diplomat and very objective to the process, and did a terrific job in managing that what was somewhat a volatile committee.
Well, I'm happy to take your recommend. If you're asking me, I'm assuming that I have a vote, and if you're asking me, do I know them? No, and I would be happy to take your recommendation and vote accordingly.
Okay. I might, based on what you're saying, I mean, I'm Alton, since you know him the most, I'm listening to you. And my inclination is to lean a little bit to Andy because of the Southern Zone vice president spot's a little different than treasurer. I think it's more of a people person position, and that's kind of, he reached out to you. That's what I think. That's kind of what we're talking about. The kind of officer that like Chris Knotts has been, that you can walk up and talk to. So I kind of, but I agree, Tim's totally qualified. I kind of lean towards Andy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I like Andy, and again, like I say, he's a very objective and diplomatic person. I think he'd be excellent in that role.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is I'm going to vote for Andy for our board. I don't know
I'm good
whether
with that.
is that enough of a vote there for Michael, you and Maria?
Sorry, I keep forgetting that the phone is in my hand, and I go looking for the mute button on my computer. I'm like, it's in my hand. Yeah, that sounds. I think I don't believe this calls for a roll call vote officially, but it seems there's a consensus that's okay.
Okay, I mean, I can do a motion and we can do a second if you think we should.
Maria, do you have an opinion on that?
I don't think it's absolutely necessary just because it's not going to go to the full board. But if you all just want for the record to do that, that's fine.
I'm happy just letting the record show that we discussed it and reached a consensus on Andy. Is that or is that, Steve, is that okay?
That's fine. Or do individual board members vote, or does the board vote?
It's the board as a collective.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
It's just the board has one vote, so it is.
There you go.
But I've been designated as our voter, unless something happens to me, and then Robert is voting.
Light it up. You're good to go by me.
All right. Okay. Is that okay with you, Steve?
Sounds good.
Okay. The assistant VP, Bobby Bailly and Ivan Hoffman are the two there. Alton, which way you go there?
Once again, I've met both of those guys. Bobby, as you know, Ricky, and I think Robert, you and Steve know too. Probably y'all have seen him. He's a lot more energetic and dynamic than Ivan is. You know, Ivan's been in the organization a very long time, and he's served in certain roles there before. I think he's from Arkansas. I don't remember where Bobby is from. Do you
He's Texas.
remember, Rick?
Yeah,
Hey.
Bobby's a Texas PE, and Ivan's an Arkansas surveyor.
Okay, I'm going to go in this case with the PE.
Okay.
Got my
Rob.
vote.
Okay, Rob. Okay. Robert.
I'm good with that too.
All right. Steve.
I'm actually good with either one of them. I've met and talked with both of them, so.
Okay, I'm kind of favoring Bobby, so I think we got a pretty good consensus on Bobby Bayi for the assistant VP. Okay, Michael, that's all I know of that we are voting on. If there's some other things, I mean, for the Southern Zone I'm talking about, which is next Thursday. If there are other things we're going to be voting on in the Southern Zone, I haven't seen that yet, or else I've missed it. I'll go back and read.
I'm not aware of any, Ricky, and I've actually gone back and searched my email for NCES Southern Zone meeting, all different kinds of searches, and have not found anything related to this recently.
Okay. Well, I did hear in the State of the Union meeting before today that for these zone meetings, everybody on the board is invited. There is not a limit, so everybody can attend. Since it's a virtual meeting, anybody on the way I took that is anybody on the engineering committee and on the staff who wanted to be a part of that can be in on that virtual zone meeting.
Okay. If as long as the meeting link is not specific, meaning it can only be used by one person, feel free to send it to me and I will send it out.
Okay, I guess I would have thought everybody had received that, but
Ricky, I did receive it and I have registered.
okay.
I think that the deadline was actually the end of March, but you probably still, I think you have to register to get the link.
I think that's right.
I was looking down the agenda and there is on the agenda some resolutions. It doesn't say what they are. You know anything about that?
I don't. I'll have to do a little homework on that.
So we have notified in CWS that you will be the one voting for us.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm the alternate. They sent me something about that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other business for this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Wait a minute. Did we just were we going to talk about attendees, or are we going to wait till the next meeting?
Attendees for the national meeting?
Yeah, the annual meeting's in August, and we can send 2 people total. I mean, we can wait till next meeting, I suppose, but just a question.
I think they wanted to know now, Robert, in the meeting, the state of the council meeting. They want to know now.
Well, here's what I think we tell them. We can send 2 people. I think I mean, I can go and I'm sure there's others that can too, but, I think they just want to know the number that would attend and if we could. And we don't have any restrictions like some of them have to, we don't have to come back and quarantine for half our lives or whatever, like some other states do. So, I think we can
Robert,
send.
is that something that legal and the executive directors attend as well?
Maria, I think you can, but I think it's right now, it's just 2 total, that includes everybody, legals, MBAs, everybody. So, I mean,
Gotcha.
Now,
you and Michael.
Robert, I have another quick point of questioning here. Because NCEES works with the engineers and the land surveyors, and it's 2 separate boards, does that include 2 spots for the land surveyors board, or is it 1 each?
No, it's 1 per board, Michael, so the land surveyors would have 2 as well. That's the way they explained it, because they basically said there were 69 boards. I think that's right. And they kind of they multiplied that by 2 or something.
Yeah, the surveyors are totally different from us as far as that number for the meeting. So it's 2 for the engineering board, 2 for the the land surveyors.
Understood.
But I mean, I think we need to say we could send 2 just to hold our slots, and then they may not end up having it. If half the boards can't show up the way they talked, then they probably won't have a in-person meeting.
Robert, I was thinking they wanted names. Did I misunderstand that?
Well, we can give them names, but surely to God, we can switch that over the next couple months.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. They probably want to go ahead and send out the official delegate invitation.
So, Michael, are you and Maria, do you want to, I mean, you all represent both boards, right?
We do both work on both boards, yes.
I mean, if you can go, I think send both your names. I mean, I think and then, you can send an engineer and a surveyor or something. Although surveyors probably don't really deserve to go, but I mean, that's part of it. I'm just kidding.
That's terrible. And realize that Tim Lingerfeld, I don't know if he's actually on the surveyors board anymore or not, but as Southern Zone Vice President, he won't count as one of the 2.
Right.
So it would be 2 in addition to Tim going for the surveyors. So what you're saying kind of makes sense, Robert.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could take 2 engineers, Maria and Michael, and then Tim could represent the surveyor board, as well as, I mean, his slot's another slot.
All right, who do we, I haven't received anything. I've been looking here. And I haven't received anything asking for names. Who do we need to get in touch with? And it could be that Roxana is on some of these and I'm not sure, if I'm looking for a specific name of somebody or if I'm looking for NCWS meetings.
Michael, I think it's Davey. I think it's Davey or somebody that you need to reach out to. He's a lot less nervous looking than he has been, but I think that's who.
Okay, I do have a meeting from him from last July about the NCWS annual meeting from last year. So I will I'll check in with him.
'Cause I was looking to see what it said about annual. Let me see here. It, well, that's last year's annual meeting. Something. I would reach out and just make sure, but I think we could send as many as 5 total.
Okay, I'll check in with him. Thanks for that. I can at least get in touch with Davey.
Okay, is that everything we need to do?
I'm good.
All right, let's adjourn and we'll meet again in May and also tomorrow, I guess.
See y'all in the morning. Well, talk to y'all in the morning.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care now.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good evening.
Dude, thanks.